Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of My Angular Story. This week we're talking to Adrian Fâciu. Adrian, I almost called you Angular. There we go.
Yeah, that works also.
Yeah. So Adrian, do you want to just remind people who you are and why you're famous, all that stuff?
Yeah, sure. I'm not pretty sure about that famous part, but I'm Adrian. I work as architect and developer at a company called Visma Software. They primarily make like financials, accounting, ERP systems, and so on. I live in Romania, and since, I don't know, like 3 years ago, I'm working with Angular daily and doing all kind of things with it.
Nice.
And I've previously been on adventures in Angular when we talked about a post that I've written on Medium called NGRX Tips and Tricks. And that was great.
Yeah, that was episode 214 of Adventures in Angular. And yeah. This episode is sponsored by Sentry.io. Recently, I came across a great tool for tracking and monitoring problems in my apps. Then I asked them if they wanted to sponsor the show and allow me to share my experience with you. Sentry provides a terrific interface for keeping track of what's going on with my app. It also tracks releases so I can tell if what I deployed makes things better or worse. They give full stack traces and as much information as possible about the situation when the error occurred to help you track down the errors. Plus, one thing I love, you can customize the context provided by Sentry. So, if you're looking for specific information about the request, you can provide it. It automatically scrubs passwords and secure information, and you can customize the scrubbing as well. Finally, it has a user feedback system built in that you can use to get information from your users. Oh, and I also love that they support open source to the point where they actually open sourced Sentry if you want to self-host it. Use the code devchat at Sentry.io to get 2 months free on Sentry's small plan. That's code devchat at Sentry.io. So are those tips and tricks still current, I guess?
Yeah, I think most of them.
Because things change. It's always interesting to see where they're going with that stuff. So
yeah, I've like taken notes of a few other ones that I see around, and at some point I'll probably write a follow-up on that post with a few new ones, let's call them like that.
Awesome. And if people want to go all fanboy on you, are you going to be at NGConf?
No, I'll be at NG Vikings. It's a conference in Copenhagen, Denmark, and I'm quite excited to be there.
Yeah, that one looks awesome. Cool. Well, let's go ahead and jump in and talk about you and your coding journey. It's always interesting to me to see where people come from with this stuff, and I find that there are some similarities between people and some differences, and some of the differences depend on where they're from. And you know, I think we've interviewed one or two other people from Romania, but yeah, I'm really curious just to see kind of how you came into Angular and what your journey looks like. So let's start with how you got into code, though. How did you get into programming?
Yeah, well, I think this will not be very different from some other developers. When I was young and at school, that's when I interacted first time with computers. And of course, we played games because that's what kids want to do. And at some point, I became really interested in how are those games made.
Right.
And that's how I found out about programming and what it means a bit. And I've started having some optional classes related to programming. And at some point, I gave up about the part of how games are made, and I just moved to creating software and so on. So from high school, I already had like a connection with this, and I knew that this is something that I like, and I like to go in that direction. And my parents just bought me a computer at home at some point, and then I was just spending some time tinkering with things. And then it just followed from there. I was very fortunate from that point of view, because like I said, I knew what I like to do, or at least a part of what I would like to do. I just followed to high school on that part, and university and so on.
Mm-hmm.
So it went straightforward from there for me.
Nice. It's interesting to me how many people were exposed to computers at a young age. You know, they got in, and some people it was, you know, I played Hunt the Wumpus for hours, and for other people it was I got in, I fiddled with it, and then, you know, started programming with it. I'm curious how mean, what was it that made you say, okay, I'm going to figure out how this thing works, instead of just, doing what a lot of other people did on it and just, using the word processor and playing whatever games were on it?
Well, I think initially it started, well, I played a lot, of course, and after I played a while, it was just curiosity of how it might work. And I think it helped that I've started having some lessons and the teacher was trying to explain us a bit what's behind it and how it works. And they even tried to teach us like basic programming, like Visual Basic or something like that.
Right.
And I remember I was like really pissed off because I was missing one semicolon and nothing worked, and I couldn't understand how someone can just do that daily. But I was very young then.
Nice. That's awesome. So so you get into programming, you kind of go to college. I found in college, and I don't know how old you are or what your experience was, but when I went to college, I took a bunch of computer science courses, and none of them really had a whole lot to do with web development or a lot of the things that I did once I became a professional. Is that kind of in line with your experience, or did they really teach you actionable things that you used in your programming career?
I would say that I almost agree with you. Most of the classes didn't have that much to do with what I wanted. Generally, I had like very good grades at labs where you had to do something hands-on. At regular courses where just you had to learn some things that didn't look that interesting to me.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't find it that interesting. I did like C++ programming and C, which was okay because you learned something.
Right.
For example, after university, I went to a company and worked as a C# developer, and I never learned C# at university or anywhere else. I just learned it a bit by myself. So, but
it's
I
funny
think
to say that because I have a brother in university who's going to the university right now, and he's learning C#. So,
yeah, I think things change here also. So now they are doing more hands-on things. But I remember, for example, some classes related to hardware, and they were teaching us like hardware from 10 years ago at that point. So it was pretty useless. But I think it was important that I've learned exactly how to learn or how to train myself, how to look for things, what to look, and so on.
Yeah, that's what because my brother, he's asked me a few times, he's like, so what's the most important thing that I'm learning at school? And yeah, that's it. It's, well, you learn sort of the basic concepts of how people think about these problems so that you can go learn how to learn the things you actually need to know. Because most of the stuff they're covering is stuff that you're never going to use.
Yeah, exactly. And you go to a job and it's not like, okay, I have no internet and no colleagues and no anything. You just have to get some basic skills of problem solving, and then you're good to go.
Yep. So how did you wind up getting into JavaScript then and web development?
Well, at the company that I currently work for, I worked at my initial project, the one that I was hired for, like, I don't know, 3 years, maybe a bit more. And then I got a bit bored. I need some challenges from time to time and new things to learn and so on. So after writing only C# code for 3+ years, I told them that I need something else. Either they can assign me to a new project or give me something more interesting to do, or I might look for something else.
Right.
And there was a new product and project setting up. They didn't know exactly what's going to be used there, like technology stack or anything. They just said, okay, now partially you're on this team, see what you can do there. And the team grew at some point. We were several developers before we were actually starting the coding part, just meetings and deciding how and what is going to be implemented.
Right.
And we figured out that there's no one on the team that actually has any experience or real world experience with web development. Like no one knew exactly what these single page applications are, how to do them, anything like that. And I just raised my hand and said, okay, I'll do it. Just let me take care of this. And then I really started looking into frameworks and JavaScript and everything else I had before, like basic understanding and some basic knowledge playing with some JavaScript and HTML and so on at home, but I didn't do like any production project with them.
Right.
And I've just investigated what I have to use there.
Yep. I find it interesting though. I mean, a lot of people that I know, they get to the point that you got to where it's like, look, I want a different kind of a challenge. I want to do different kinds of things. And instead of talking to their boss or their employer, they just switch jobs. And in a lot of cases, the people who are employing you, they want to keep you. And so, yeah, it makes a lot of sense to just go to them and communicate with them and let them know what you need.
Yeah, that's exactly my point. I'm usually one that gives feedback anytime.
Yep.
So my initial feeling will just tell them how I feel. If they're not going to do anything about it, and that's it. But
yeah, and that's the easy part, right? Is, you know, I gave them a shot. They told me no, so then I'll move on and do something else.
yeah, exactly. And like you say, I think most people just want to keep you there. So it's, instead of just leaving the company, it's better for them if you still work there, but on a different product. So
yep. Well, the other thing is, and this is something that I came to when I worked at a company. I actually did the support, their customer support for them. I ran the team, and yeah, when I wanted to move up in the company, you know, I wanted to move over to development. They basically told me no, and so I went somewhere else. But I was the only person that dealt with the entire system. Like, all of the developers worked on their own little pieces of it, and they understood how it interfaced with the other pieces that their piece interfaced with. But I was the only person that actually had to deal with the whole thing. And so when I moved out of tech support into QA, and then when I finally left, a lot of people on the support team reached out to me later and told me how much harder their job was once I was gone. Because while I was still at the company, even though I was in a different department, I was still available to help them out. But once I was gone, it got a lot harder because nobody else could really give them the view on things that I had. And it was just a matter of experience specific to their system. It wasn't anything I could go use anywhere else.
Well, unfortunately, some companies don't see this right away.
It's true.
Sad, but
yeah.
Well, it's the right choice. Like you say, you tell them. If they say no, you just mind your own business.
Yep. So how did you land on Angular then? You know, they give you this application to work on. Did they tell you that you were going to use Angular, or did they let you choose it?
No, I just tell them that I'm doing things there, and they just left me alone to see what I would suggest and pick. And since I didn't work with any of these frameworks in real projects, I just took all of the major ones like Angular, React, and Vue.
Mm-hmm.
And I've created, like, you know, the calculator from any operating system. I've created it in all three of them. You probably don't want to see that code because I didn't know much what I was doing, but at least
but that's the point, right?
Feeling. Exactly.
That's the whole point. I don't know what I'm doing, but you know, at least you get a feeling for, okay, this is easy to learn, or it follows thought processes that I apply to other things. Or, you know, you get a really
exactly. And after I finished all of them, or three of them, Angular looked the best candidate for several reasons. I think that from me, and I hear this from other people a lot also, that coming from C# or Java or other OP language, it's a bit easier because you have all that common knowledge there. Like you have classes and dependency injection and typing system because it's TypeScript and so on. So things were a bit easier to understand for me. And since Angular was branded as enterprise application level, like in a larger company, it's an easier sell.
Right.
Because usually you have teams where they want people to work more than one thing. So it's not that common. You work only on web. And I just said, okay, I'll pick Angular, and I've started with it. I think it was still releasing before the first release, like just release candidates. And I just came to work next day and updated, and nothing worked anymore. So I had to do that for like 1 month or something. But it was quite interesting in the beginning. It got considerably way better afterwards with the tooling and me understanding more what I'm doing.
Nice. So one question, and I just got back from a podcasting conference, and they were talking about interviewing in one of the sessions I went to. And somebody brought up a question that I thought was awesome. So I'm going to add it. I sent you the questions beforehand, but I'm going to add this one in, and we're going to see where we go with it. So the question is, what do you feel like was a turning point or a struggle for you that you had to overcome?
Well, I think the biggest thing for me here was that for several months in the beginning, I was alone working on this.
Okay.
And that was for me like the biggest struggle, because since I didn't have that much experience, I was just doing things and then looking at them next day and just, okay, I'll have to refactor this because it's not good. Like I was having code reviews with myself and thinking about how things should work. And it's really hard if you're just the only one there.
Right. So what did you do? I mean, were there things that you did that made it better, or?
Well, one of the first things I did was like look around in the company for similar people, like in other teams. Is everyone working with this new version of Angular? And when I found someone, I would just talk with them about different things, even though we were not working on the same project.
Right.
You can still exchange ideas and see where it leads. And I constantly complain about it until they actually hired someone to work fully on the web front with me.
That's awesome. I love that idea, though. I mean, when I was getting into Ruby on Rails, I was running a tech support team at Mosey, at the company I was working at. And, you know, they had developers there that worked in Ruby on Rails, but they were all working on other stuff, and they weren't really that available to me. I mean, I could go and ask them basic stuff, but they weren't super available to me. And so I went to the users groups. I did interact with them as much as I could to get information from them. But yeah, I love that. You know, if you feel like you're stuck or you're alone or you know, you're not quite sure where you're supposed to be headed with this stuff, yeah, find somebody else to kind of, you know, be that second brain you can bounce ideas off. This episode is brought to you by Triplebyte. Applying to programming jobs sucks. You have to put the right keywords in your resume, you spend hours and hours on the phone screens and take-home projects, and that's assuming the company even responds to your application. Well, if you're a software engineer, Triplebyte can help. They work with over 400 top tech companies, from big names like Dropbox and Adobe to exciting startups. You do one brief online interview with them, and if you do well, you go straight to final interviews with the company on their platform. It's like the Common App for software developers. Triplebyte does not look at your resume or where you went to school. All they care about is if you can code. I've helped dozens of software developers with various credentials get jobs, and this looks like a terrific way for you to get in and get interviewed and get a job without a lot of the hassle and overhead. You can go check them out at triplebyte.com/astory. That's triplebyte.com, byte as in 8 bits. As a special offer for listeners of this show, if you take a job through Triplebyte, they'll offer you a $1,000 signing bonus.
Yeah, exactly. And I've just remembered this one. Another important point for me there was like I started going to a local meetup about JavaScript, and then there it's way easier to find people that are sort of like in similar positions with you and chat with them. And we were always looking at the presentations and then going out to some place, having a beer and discussing about all the things that we all had.
Right. Very cool. So I guess the thing that I know that you've worked on most is the blog. You know, we brought you in for the blog post on NGRX tips and tricks. How did you get into writing blog posts?
I think it was a few years ago after Angular Connect in London. I've been to the conference. And they gave us like a smart light bulb, like you can connect with Bluetooth to it and change the color and things like that. And I've used the native script to create like a simple mobile application to control it. Okay. And after I did that, I was like, okay, let's try to write a blog post about this and see how it goes. Maybe try to explain the whole process. Maybe someone will find it useful. And then I did it. It was okay. You know, it's a first thing, like an application blog post. Everything cannot be great because it's the first one you're doing.
Right.
But it was decent enough for me, and I really liked the experience. So then sometimes I've got this habit of writing a blog post, but I don't do it that often.
Mm-hmm.
Generally, I do it when I have something like interesting to say, like how I did with NGRX, and after that I've written a new one with about CDK and overlay and so on. So that's the way. And I've realized that, you know, everyone says that you don't know something until you're able to explain it to some other people, or to
Right.
talk with someone about it. And I realized it really helps me, the whole process of writing a blog post. It's also good for me. And if it helps someone else that's looking for that information, that's way better.
Nice. Now you've been writing these on Angular in depth, and we've had Maxim on the show and talked to him a bit. How did you wind up writing these posts over there as opposed to on your own blog or things like that? Did you know Maxim or?
Well, when I've started with Angular, there weren't that many resources around, and like blog posts and video tutorials. And Angular in depth was one of the things that I was checking like almost daily to see whatever new content they have, to just read everything, because they had like really interesting things. And when I've started with the blog post, I was just writing them on my profile on Medium, so nothing major. And I've actually written the one with NGRX and posted it on my personal profile on Medium.
Mm-hmm.
And then I thought, well, it's pretty close enough, or I had a good opinion about it that's good enough to be on a publication like Angular in depth. And I've just sent Max a message on Twitter about it, and he said it's okay. Some other people there had a review of it, and I've made a few changes. They're always awesome and really helpful with that. And then I'm just following there, because the whole
Awesome.
experience, it's way better for me, and they're like a really smart and nice group of people.
Yep. And I've been saying Maxim, but it is Max. So
Yeah.
I should remember that, because part of my name is Max as well. So
yeah, that's easy.
yeah, people call me Max all the time. It's kind of funny. But anyway, so let's have you given any talks at conferences or worked on open source or any other contributions to the community that you'd like to talk about?
So I've just started looking into applying for talks at larger conferences,
Mm-hmm.
because I think I've got enough experience like from holding internal trainings at my company. And I'm also holding talks at a local meetup from time to time. So I've had talk about that NGRX tips and tricks and several others.
Right.
So I'm trying my luck now with by applying at a few conferences. About open source, I have just some minor commits and contributions to some projects. Nothing major. I follow more projects, like I closely follow NGRX to see what happens there, but I don't always have the time like to follow up and do some relevant changes for them. But
so
it's
what are you
like
working on now?
personally, I'm trying to write a few more blog posts, and I'm always like having several side projects started, like most developers. I just give up on the part like believing that I'm going to release them or buying a domain for them or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
Nowadays, I just look at what I want to learn or what I would like to have some experience with, and I just start a side project to play with it.
Nice.
For example, I don't know, you are seeing everywhere things about GraphQL, but I realized that in the future or near future, I will not have a chance to experience with it or to play with it at my job. So then I've just started a side project to see how it works, how it looks, and so on.
Nice. Is that something that we can go look at online? Is it a public repo somewhere? Or?
No, most of them are just on my laptop. I don't even put them to GitHub, only if I want to see them on my work laptop or something like that.
Nice. Well, hopefully we'll see you speaking at some of the conferences, and I'd love to see what you're playing with these days. GraphQL is kind of an interesting thing, and yeah.
I'm not limiting myself only to Angular. It's great, but it's a tool, it's a framework. If you have the concepts in mind, you can play around with many other things. As long as you can find time for that, it's great.
Yep, I agree. I was going to say something snarky about being like an Angular apostate, but
no, I'm working enough with Angular at my job, and I'm grateful that I have a great team there that we're working with, and I'm challenged enough to put it like that most of the time.
Very cool. Well, then let's go ahead and move on to picks. Do you have some things you want to shout out about on the show?
Yeah, I have one that's quite nice and interesting. It's called Revo.js. It's a new conference. It will be held in the city where I live, in Timișoara, Romania. It's community organized, and that's something nice. It's going to be this autumn, like the first edition ever. And I think it's the first JavaScript conference in this part of Romania, which will be quite nice.
Nice. Do you have a website that I can go to for that?
Yes. It's revo.js.ro from Romania. I've posted in the chat.
Nice. Revo, R-E-V-O. So I was hearing something else. So
no,
that's why I couldn't find it.
Yeah, it's like from revolution, I believe. I'm not sure if that's the idea behind it, but at least that's how the word starts.
Yep.
And of course, I'm not sure if it needs to be mentioned, but I'll say it anyhow. The Angular in-depth blog. Like I said, it's a really great group of people.
Yep.
I would be able to write a post just for some of them to review it for me, because I learn a lot like that. I don't even need to publish it or anything. They are just great, and I think that the material there, it's really good.
Yeah, they've always got great stuff there, so very cool. Well, I'm going to jump in, and I'm going to do some picks as well. My first pick is going to be Podfest. I may have mentioned it on a previous episode saying I was going to go to it, but it turned out to be a really, really positive experience for me. And it's funny because I'm not sure exactly how it all kind of came about, but for the last year, and this is going to get a little bit personal, but for the last year, I've just kind of been carrying around this weight, and I don't know exactly how to describe it, but basically since my dad passed away last year, I just have had this thing hanging over me, and I couldn't quite let it go, and I wasn't quite sure what it was, and I'm not sure exactly what it was, whether it was just kind of the community or the environment at Podfest, or if I was just finally over whatever it was and around a lot of people, and so I could realize that I was over it. But yeah, this weekend I really have felt more like myself than I have in about 10 months. And so, and it was super positive environment. And I think that was part of what either led me to realize that I was over it or to get me over it. And so I really want to shout out about it. I've gone to a number of other podcasting events, including Podcast Movement. And yeah, it's just, it was just different there. And so, yeah, I want to shout out about that. The thing that really made the conference was the community there. It was the people. And I can't always say that for the conferences that I go to, but for this one, I really can. So, yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, I feel invigorated. I have all these things, and I'm just like, I'm going to go conquer everything now. So, yeah, it's been really great. The other thing that I'm going to shout out about, so I've started my personal blog again. And yeah, it seems like that one goes through cycles where I'll post a handful of posts to it, and then something will happen and it'll disappear. So the WordPress setup I have will go down or something. And then anyway, so then I will start it up again, and then, yeah, same thing, right? So I have started it up again, charlesmaxwood.com. One thing that I'm struggling with a little bit is just figuring out what parts of it I want to post to devchat.tv as blog posts, or do on DevRev as videos where I just talk to the camera, or both, or whether I want to post it to my personal blog. Some of it's easy, like if it's political or my religious thinking or things like that, I just put that on my personal blog because it isn't really relevant to devchat.tv. But a lot of the other stuff, even some of the personal stuff that I'm going through, I find a lot of people in the programming community are interested in and kind of need to hear that they can overcome whatever it is. I generally don't complain about things. I generally wait till I'm over it, and then I post and say, hey, this is how I got over this. So, and that's just because I really don't like to talk about negativity unless I can, put something positive out there with it. So anyway, you can go check it out at charlesmaxwood.com. And I'm going to pick the technology stack that I'm using because I switched. I'm not using WordPress anymore. In fact, I'm actually working on switching devchat.tv off of WordPress, but that's another story. So the stack I'm using is 11D, and 11D is a static site generator. And then I'm publishing it to Netlify, and I really love Netlify. They are awesome, and I'm looking forward to playing with some of the features they have on there. So if you're looking for kind of a simple way to post or host web applications where you essentially have static HTML, you need some basic like form processing and things like that, and maybe some serverless functions to handle the couple of things you do need to call back to the back end for. Netlify is awesome, and then you can build your Angular app on top of it. So anyway, those are my picks.
That's great. I was looking actually at possible options for like a personal blog or site in case I'll be moving it from Medium. So I'll check it out.
Yeah, it was nice too because the other night I was on the airplane. I paid for the Wi-Fi. It was like $20 for the flight. And so I was just working on it there. And yeah, I switched my domain over to it. That was super easy. They tell you how to do that, and then they handle the HTTPS and everything else. So yeah, it's been awesome. I've currently broken it. I mean, that's the drawback, right? Is that you can break it with code, whereas with WordPress you generally don't. But yeah, I'm really loving it. So
nice. Well, I'll be sure to follow you on the blog. See what you post there.
Cool. Well, I guess the last question is if people want to find you online, where do they find you? I'm
in most places like Adrian Fâciu. So I'm on Twitter, Stack Overflow, Medium, GitHub. I probably have the same handle everywhere. But preferably you can just look for me on Twitter, Adrian Fâciu, and I'm there. And it's also easy because I'm trying to have the same image all over the place. So if it's a guy that looks like me, then it's me.
Very cool. Yeah, I was pulling all of my social links together for my personal blog, and I realized that I have different usernames. Like Twitter and GitHub are the same, and in several other places it's the same, but a lot of the other places it's not. It's kind of frustrating because a lot of them won't let you change it. Like YouTube won't let you change it.
Yeah, exactly. When you create it, you won't think about this necessarily, and then, like you say, you'll end up with different.
Yeah, Facebook won't let you change it, but yeah. Anyway. All right. Well, thanks for coming, Adrian.
Thanks. It was really nice being here with you.
Yeah, you too. We'll go ahead and wrap this one up, folks, and we will be back next week. Bandwidth for this segment is provided by CacheFly, the world's fastest CDN. Deliver your content fast with CacheFly. Visit CacheFly.com to learn more.